You see it everywhere, on stop signs, on warning labels, on the lips of someone trying to get your attention. Red. You have been taught that red means danger. But here is the thing nobody told you. You were never taught that. You were born knowing it. And the reason goes back further than you can imagine. Long before cities, long before language, long before anything you would recognize as civilization, your ancestors were already afraid of the color red. Not because someone told them to be, because the ones who were not afraid of it died before they could pass anything on to you. This is the story of why one color rewired the human brain, and it starts, like most human stories, with blood. Picture the earliest version of a human being, not quite what you would call a person, shorter, hairier, moving through a world that is trying to kill them at every moment. They do not have weapons worth speaking of. They do not have walls or medicine or fire on demand. What they have is pattern recognition, the ability to scan an environment and pull out the details that matter. And nothing in that environment signals danger as loudly as red. Think about what produces that color in the natural world. Blood, obviously. Fresh blood means something nearby is hurt or dead or being eaten. Red berries often mean poison, and your ancestors learned that lesson with their lives. The flush of an angry primate signals threat. The red glow of infected skin signals disease. Even the red eyes of a sleep-deprived or sick individual signal that this person should not be trusted right now. Red was a code, a biological alarm system built into the environment itself. And over hundreds of thousands of years, the humans who read that code correctly survived. The ones who ignored it did not. So your brain learned. Not in the way you learn to read or ride a bicycle. This was something older and slower and far more permanent. Generation after generation of humans who felt a spike of alertness at the sight of red lived long enough to have children. Those children inherited slightly more sensitive responses. Over time, across thousands of generations, that sensitivity compounded into something automatic, something that bypassed conscious thought entirely. Today, neuroscientists can measure this. When you see the color red, your body responds before your mind does. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles receive a tiny surge of readiness. Cortisol, the stress hormone, edges upward. This happens in the fraction of a second before you have processed what you are looking at, or even decided whether it is dangerous. Your body is already reacting. It already knows. This is not a metaphor. It is measurable, repeatable, and it happens to nearly every human being regardless of where they were born or how they were raised. Researchers at the University of Rochester ran a series of experiments where they showed participants identical tests printed on different colored paper. Red paper versus green paper versus white paper. Same questions, same difficulty, same everything except the color. The people who received the red paper performed significantly worse. Their scores dropped. Their anxiety spiked. Their brains were allocating resources to threat detection instead of problem solving, and they did not know why, because your brain never stopped living in that older world. But here is where it gets more interesting. Red does not just mean danger, it also means something else entirely, something that, on the surface, seems completely opposite. Desire. Think about the color of a ripe piece of fruit. When a mango, or an apple, or a cherry reaches peak ripeness, it often shifts toward red. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors were scanning the forest floor and the canopy above them for exactly that color. Red meant, this food is ready. This is the one worth eating. This is the energy that will keep you alive through winter. So, red became something your nervous system could not ignore, whether the context was threat or reward. It demanded attention. It forced a response. It could not be looked past. And your ancestors used this. Anthropologists have found red ochre, a reddish-brown pigment made from iron-rich rock, at archaeological sites more than 300,000 years old, far older than anything else humans deliberately created. These early people were grinding rock into powder and applying that red pigment to their bodies, their tools, their shelters, and their burial sites. Some of the oldest known intentional human markings in caves are red. They were not doing this by accident. They understood, in whatever pre-verbal, pre-conceptual way early humans understood things, that red carried weight. It signaled something. It communicated. It changed how other people perceived you and how they responded. The color was already a language before language existed. Fast forward to the ancient world. Civilizations that had no contact with each other, separated by oceans and mountain ranges and thousands of years, all arrived at the same conclusion. Red was the color of power. Red was the color of gods and rulers and war. In ancient Rome, generals wore red cloaks when they marched into battle. The color of their garments was meant to intimidate, to signal dominance, to trigger that deep biological fear in the people standing across the field from them. Roman emperors wore deep crimson, a dye so expensive and labor-intensive to produce that it became illegal for anyone else to wear it. Tyrian purple, which leaned heavily into red tones, required thousands of sea snails to produce a single gram. Wearing it meant you controlled the world. In ancient China, red was the color of luck and life and protection. The emperor's palace walls were painted red. Important documents were sealed in red. Weddings, celebrations, and New Year rituals were draped in it. The reasoning is almost identical to what the Romans understood across the world. Red gets attention. Red says this matters. Red says something important is happening here. In ancient Egypt, the god of chaos and storms and the desert was associated with red. Warriors painted their bodies with red ochre before battle, echoing something their ancestors had been doing for hundreds of thousands of years before written history began. Here is what is remarkable about all of this. These cultures did not share information. They could not look each other up. They arrived at the power of red independently, because the power of red was not a cultural invention. It was a biological fact that every human being carried in their nervous system, and these cultures were simply responding to it. They were following instructions written into them before they were born. Now flip this around and look at your own life. Think about how many times today red has pulled your attention without you noticing. The notification dot on your phone is red. The unread email badge is red. The sale tag at the grocery store is red. The record button on your camera is red. The heart you tap to like something is red. Emergency vehicles are red. Exits are marked in red. Error messages appear in red text. Someone designed all of these things, and when they chose red, they were not being creative. They were being obedient. Obedient to the same ancient signal your ancestors encoded into you. Your attention follows red involuntarily. Designers know this. Marketers know this. Politicians know this. The color that once kept your ancestors alive in a world full of predators and poisonous plants is now the most reliable way to get you to look at something, buy something, feel something, click on something. The alarm that protected your species for 300,000 years is now being used to sell you shoes. And the strangest part, it still works. Every time. Because the part of your brain that responds to red did not evolve to be outsmarted. It evolved to keep you breathing. It does not know the difference between a bleeding wound and a clearance sale. It does not need to. Its only job was to make sure you never ignored red. And it succeeded. So the next time you find yourself reaching for the item with the red tag, or glancing at your phone the moment a red dot appears, or feeling your chest tighten slightly when a warning flashes across your screen, know that you are not being manipulated by a graphic designer. You are being called by something 300,000 years old. Something your ancestors built into you long before they had words for what they were doing. The world has changed completely since they lived. The color has not changed at all, and neither, underneath everything, have you.